8 years ago, everything changed in a way no mother could ever prepare for. Her daughter, Lily, had just turned 21 and was full of life, excitement, and a thirst for adventure. She'd been planning her road trip for months, mapping out every stop, every scenic route, and every quirky roadside attraction she wanted to see. It was supposed to be a rite of passage, a journey of self-discovery before settling into adult life. Her mother had been nervous, of course, as any parent would be, but she trusted Lily. She was responsible, smart, and independent, and she had promised to check in every day. At first, everything went according to plan. Lily sent texts with pictures of desert sunsets, small-town diners, and handwritten postcards that still smelled faintly of gasoline and sun-warmed paper. But then, on the 5th day, the calls stopped. The texts ceased. Silence replaced the chatter. At first, her mother thought maybe her phone had died or she was in an area with no reception. She tried not to panic. But when a full day passed with no word, she reported her daughter missing. The days that followed were a blur of anxiety, sleepless nights, and countless calls to police departments, hospitals, and even truck stops. No trace of Lily's car. No activity on her credit cards. She had vanished somewhere between two small towns in the southwest, leaving no clues behind. Friends and strangers joined the search. News outlets picked up the story, and for a while, Lily's face was everywhere, on missing person flyers, social media, local broadcasts. Her mother clung to hope, refusing to believe her daughter was gone forever. But weeks turned into months, and months into years, and the world gradually moved on. Only her mother remained stuck in that moment, refusing to let go of the possibility that someday, somehow, she might find her daughter again. Despite the desperate search efforts and widespread media attention, no solid leads ever surfaced. It was as though Lily had disappeared into thin air, leaving behind a haunting void that time refused to fill. Her mother, Karen, clung to every flicker of hope, every anonymous tip, every vague sighting, but each one led to nothing. The pain of not knowing was worse than any truth could have been. At least if she had answers, she could begin to grieve. But the silence was a cruel and constant companion, stretching endlessly across days, months, and then years. The world around her kept turning, but Karen lived in a kind of suspended reality, where every second was laced with the question, where is she? She kept Lily's room exactly as it had been the day she left, refusing to box up the memories. Every morning, she passed by the door and paused, sometimes resting her hand on the knob, whispering a promise that she wouldn't stop looking. Over the years, the search consumed her life. She joined online forums, connected with other families of the missing, and taught herself how to dig through public records and track potential clues. She put up new flyers when the old ones faded, made annual posts on social media to keep Lily's name alive, and even consulted psychics in moments of desperation. But as year after year passed without a trace, friends began to drift away, unable to keep living in her suspended grief. Even the police eventually called it a cold case, the official interest fading into formality. Yet Karen couldn't let go. Something deep in her, a mother's instinct that no one else understood, told her Lily was still alive. She didn't know where, or how, or why the disappearance had happened, but she refused to believe that her daughter was just gone. So she kept going, quietly and stubbornly, carrying a torch in the dark, even as the world slowly stopped looking. One evening, 8 years after Lily vanished, Karen found herself driving through a quiet stretch of highway, far from home. She wasn't even sure why she had taken this particular route. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was the pull of some unspoken hope she never let die. The sun had dipped below the horizon hours ago, and the world was bathed in the kind of darkness that made everything feel heavier. Fatigued and emotionally drained, she decided to stop for the night. As her headlights illuminated a weathered wooden sign reading, "Dusty Lantern Pub, good food and cold beer," she turned into the gravel lot without really thinking. She wasn't there for drinks or food, she just needed to stop, to breathe, to be somewhere unfamiliar. The pub was small, rustic, and warm, with dim amber lighting and the low hum of a jukebox playing an old country tune. It wasn't crowded, just a handful of regulars scattered across the bar and booths, all absorbed in their own quiet conversations. Karen sat at a corner table near the window, her fingers wrapped around a coffee mug more for comfort than warmth. She let her eyes wander around the room, taking in the details: the faded license plates on the wall, the smell of fried food, the clink of glasses behind the bar. It was just another stop on just another lonely road, but there was something about the place that felt strangely significant. She wasn't sure how long she sat there before she noticed him, a broad-shouldered man in a leather jacket sitting at the far end of the bar. Something about him tugged at her attention. Maybe it was the way he sat, slightly turned, as though keeping his back protected. Or maybe it was the thick braid of hair resting over his shoulder, so out of place among the short-cropped heads of the other men. She didn't know why, but her heart stirred with a flicker of something between fear and familiarity. She told herself it was nothing. Just another stranger in another bar. And yet, something in her gut whispered, "Look closer." Karen's eyes kept drifting toward the man at the bar, even as she tried to focus on the coffee cooling in her hands. There was something about him that pulled at her, something just out of reach, like a word stuck on the tip of her tongue. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and long hair tied back into a braid, the kind her daughter used to wear when she didn't want it in her face. His leather jacket was worn, not stylish, but lived in, creased and scuffed like it had seen thousands of miles on the back of a bike. He wasn't doing anything to stand out. Just sipping a drink, quiet, still. But when he turned slightly to reach for a napkin, Karen saw it, ink peeking out from under his sleeve. Her breath caught. It was a partial tattoo, nothing more than the edge of a design. But she knew it. She would know it anywhere. A delicate swirl of ivy and stars, Lily's tattoo. The one they had argued about, years ago, when Lily came home one summer afternoon with her arm wrapped in bandages and a guilty smile on her face. It had been her first, and Karen remembered pretending to be upset even though a part of her had smiled at her daughter's need to claim her identity. She had seen the tattoo 1,000 times, and now, here it was, on the arm of a biker in a nowhere pub off a forgotten highway. Karen's hands began to tremble. Her mind raced with 100 explanations. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe someone else had the same design, maybe she was seeing what she wanted to see. But the shape, the line work, it wasn't generic. It was unique, custom. Lily had drawn it herself. Her heart thudded so loudly she was sure someone could hear it. She tried to steady herself, to think, but the room felt suddenly far away, like she was underwater. Slowly, carefully, she rose from her chair, her legs feeling strangely weak. She took a hesitant step forward, then another, each one dragging with the weight of 8 years of heartbreak and hope. The man hadn't noticed her yet. He was still turned slightly away, talking quietly to the bartender. Karen was only a few feet away now, close enough to see more of the tattoo. The exact curves of it. Just like Lily's. Then he turned his head slightly, and for a split second, she saw the side of his face, the angle of his jaw, the shape of his nose. Her breath caught again. The resemblance was uncanny. Her eyes brimmed with tears as a thought both terrifying and miraculous began to form. Could it be? Could this man be her daughter? Karen's heart was hammering in her chest, loud and erratic, drowning out the sounds of the pub around her. She stood just a few feet from the man, or perhaps not a man at all. The closer she looked, the more the lines began to blur. The build was lean but not masculine. The braid, the delicate lines of the jaw, the subtle arch of the eyebrows beneath the shadow of the cap, they all felt achingly familiar. Her breath caught in her throat, and her mind screamed with impossible hope. It couldn't be. It couldn't be. But it was. Somewhere deep in her bones, she knew. She didn't even realize she had taken another step forward until she was right behind the biker, trembling. Her lips parted, but the words refused to come. Her voice, stuck in her throat for 8 years, refused to break free. She swallowed hard, and with all the courage she could summon, she softly whispered, "Lily." The biker froze. It was immediate, like time itself had stopped. The drink halted mid-air. The soft murmur of conversation in the pub seemed to vanish into a void. For a long moment, the biker didn't move. Then, slowly, hesitantly, they turned around, face pale, eyes wide, uncertain. Karen's breath left her in a rush. It was Lily. Older, leaner, sun-worn, and dressed like a stranger, but unmistakably her. The same eyes, ocean gray and fierce. The same nose with that barely noticeable bump from a childhood fall. But those eyes weren't the same. They were haunted, cautious, as though they'd seen too much and trusted too little. "Mom," Lily said, the word barely more than a breath. It felt like the world shattered and reassembled around that single word. Karen's vision blurred with tears as she stared into the face she had memorized in every photo, every dream, every sleepless night. She reached out with trembling hands, terrified she might touch her and find her gone, a mirage conjured by grief. But Lily didn't vanish. She stood, slowly, and took a shaky step forward, her own eyes wet now, mouth trembling. They didn't say anything else. They didn't need to. Karen pulled her daughter into her arms, clutching her like she would never let go again. The bar around them faded into nothing. It was just the two of them, mother and daughter, wrapped in a reunion so long overdue it hurt to feel it. 8 years of pain, longing, and unanswered prayers collapsed into that one fragile, perfect moment of recognition. The moment Lily said, "Mom," her voice cracked like the surface of a frozen lake finally giving way beneath the weight of time. It wasn't just a word, it was a release, a flood of recognition, pain, and something dangerously close to hope. Karen clung to her, arms tightening around her daughter's thin frame, as if letting go would make her disappear all over again. Lily didn't resist. She folded into the embrace slowly, awkwardly at first, then with a shuddering surrender, her arms winding around her mother's shoulders. She smelled like wind and dust and leather, and under it all, Karen could still catch the faintest trace of lavender shampoo, the same kind Lily used to steal from her when she was a teenager. Tears spilled freely now, hot and overwhelming. Karen couldn't speak. Her throat was too full, her body too shaken. She held her daughter and tried to memorize everything, the way her shoulder blades pressed through her jacket, the texture of her braid, the way her breath hitched in her chest as though she might break at any moment. "I thought you were dead," Karen finally whispered, her voice barely audible and soaked with grief. "I thought I lost you forever. I didn't know who I was for a long time," Lily said, her voice trembling. "I didn't remember, not all of it. Not at first." Karen pulled back just enough to look into her daughter's face. There were scars she hadn't had before, small ones near her jaw, one above her eyebrow, faint and pale. Her eyes, once so vibrant, now carried shadows deeper than any 29-year-old should carry. But they were her eyes. Her daughter's eyes. "You didn't remember?" Karen asked, her brow furrowed. Lily nodded, blinking hard. "I woke up in the desert. I don't know how I got there. Some people found me, bikers, travelers. They took me in, gave me food, a name. I went by Ash for years. I felt safe with them, kind of. They didn't ask questions, and I didn't have answers. It was easier not to look back." Karen's heart twisted with the weight of it, 8 years of mystery, now unraveling word by word from her daughter's lips. "But why didn't you try to find out who you were?" "I did. A few times. I tried," Lily said, voice shaking. "But it scared me. The flashes I had, they weren't good. I thought maybe I was running from something terrible. I didn't know if anyone was looking for me. I didn't know I had someone." Karen cupped Lily's face in her hands, tears streaming. "You had me. Always." Lily's lips trembled, and she let out a small, broken sound that wasn't quite a sob. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Karen pulled her close once more. "You're home now. That's all that matters." Lily's story unfolded slowly, like the peeling of a fragile, long-forgotten scar. She explained how, after waking up in the desert with no memory of who she was or how she got there, she had drifted, lost and frightened. The days blurred into nights as she wandered through small towns and empty highways, searching for something she couldn't name. Eventually, she stumbled upon a group of bikers who found her near exhaustion and took her in without hesitation. They called themselves the Iron Wolves, a tight-knit group bound not just by their love for the open road, but by a code of loyalty and protection. For Lily, they became a family when she had none left, offering shelter, food, and a place where questions were left unasked. At first, the biker life was intimidating, rough hands, leather jackets scarred by years of travel, and a freedom that was both exhilarating and dangerous. But amidst the roar of engines and the endless stretches of asphalt, Lily found a strange kind of peace. The Iron Wolves never pressed her for her past, and she never volunteered details she didn't remember. They called her Ash, a name she accepted because it felt distant enough from the life she'd lost. The scars she carried were both physical and mental, remnants of an accident or an attack she could barely recall. Nightmares haunted her sleep, flashes of a car spinning out of control, screaming, and then blackness. But the bikers were patient, protective, and steady in ways no one else had been for years. As she recounted this, Karen listened, heart aching with a mixture of sorrow and relief. Her daughter had survived horrors she couldn't begin to imagine, yet here she was, alive, speaking, and standing in front of her. The biker group had saved her in a way Karen never thought possible, keeping her safe on the fringes of society when the world had forgotten her. Lily told her about the brotherly bonds she'd formed, the rides under starlit skies, and the slow, painful journey toward reclaiming pieces of herself. It was clear that Ash, the girl who had been lost, was still fighting to emerge, and Karen vowed silently that she would help her to just that. There was so much to heal, so many years to make up for, but that night marked the beginning. Karen realized that survival wasn't just about being found, it was about being loved, understood, and given a chance to rebuild. The biker who sat before her was more than a lost daughter, she was a testament to resilience and the unexpected paths life can take. As they sat together in that dusty pub, surrounded by strangers, a fragile new family was quietly forming, one born from pain but filled with hope. That night, after the initial shock and tears had softened into a quiet, tentative peace, Karen and Lily sat together in the corner booth of the dusty pub. The soft hum of conversation and the faint clink of glasses around them seemed distant, almost unreal, as if they were suspended in a bubble of time meant just for their reunion. For 8 long years, Karen had dreamed of this moment, of holding her daughter again, hearing her voice, and feeling her presence. And now that it was here, it was both overwhelming and strangely gentle, like the first tentative step after a long fall. Lily's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her mother's, and Karen gripped them firmly, a silent promise of safety and love. The road ahead was uncertain. There were questions that needed answers, memories to be recovered, and wounds to be healed, both visible and invisible. But for the first time in nearly a decade, Karen felt a flicker of hope that those years of searching and waiting had not been in vain. Her daughter was alive, and they had been given a second chance. In the weeks that followed, they began to piece together Lily's lost years, unraveling the tangled threads of trauma and survival. Counseling sessions, medical checkups, and quiet conversations became part of their new routine. Karen learned about the biker group that had sheltered Lily, the kindness of strangers who had become family, and the strength it took for her daughter to come back. Lily, in turn, began to open up about the fears and confusion that had held her captive, slowly reclaiming her identity and the love she had been denied for so long. Their bond, once frayed by absence and silence, started to mend with each shared laugh, each remembered story, and every small step forward. It wasn't an easy path, there were setbacks, moments of doubt, and nights filled with tears, but they faced it together. The reunion in that roadside pub was not just an ending, it was the beginning of a new journey. A journey of healing, forgiveness, and rediscovery. For Karen, the pain of those 8 years would never fully fade, but it was now tempered by the joy of having her daughter back in her life. And for Lily, the road ahead was finally open, a chance to build a future beyond the shadows of her past, with her mother by her side, every step of the way.